And welcome to a special episode of Writing Through the Unknown. I'm your host, Michael, and today's guest is a very special guest who I've had the privilege of talking with for quite a while and following her along. And I know she needs no introduction, but couldn't really do it justice even if I wanted to try. So I'm going to turn it over to introduce herself. The one, the only, so amazing, so knowledgeable, Laura Eisenhower.
Oh my goodness, you're so sweet. Well, thank you so much for having me. It's great to see you.
Yes, it's been a while.
I know, I think Florida at the event, right?
Right.
Yes. Well, if you want me to say a few words about me, I guess, let's see. I'm a researcher, author, astrologer. I've been a public speaker since 2010. I like to delve into, the exopolitics, galactic history, and the planetary grid network, and the dark technologies that have impacted our ability to fully remember ourselves, and also different events that took place that was all a part of this experience in this kind of earth that we're on, and how that relates to the Sophia energy, our divine blueprint. I'm into the bigger picture ET races, and especially the research that goes into what happened after the Second World War and my great-grandfather, President Eisenhower, former President Eisenhower's administration. But one of my great passions is understanding the junk DNA and what it's really made of, and how that corresponds to all these other things I've been talking about.
That's really cool. And one question I'm sure you get asked a lot, but I'm curious the answer is, what is your opinion of the Christ-Sophia? What does it mean for humanity, and is it part of our awakening?
Yeah, it absolutely is a part of our awakening. It's what I would call, and many others, like our divine blueprint, our true 12-strand and beyond capability, what we all hold inside, what we all carry. When I say inside, I just mean like soul memory level, pre-fall, before Anunnaki, before galactic wars. Just that divine inheritance that comes from true source, right? Mother, father, the Christ-Sophia, the two that emerge from the source field, and all that emerged from there is like the offspring. But when you start to have fallen groups in this free will kind of experiment and experience, then all of a sudden hybridization, manipulation of incarnate consciousness, and all sorts of, different events that have taken place, throughout our galactic history that have made it very, very difficult to hold that or remember that or reconnect with it, particularly after Tiamat exploded, which became the asteroid belt. So when, there's trauma in the land that is held in the planetary grid network here on this earth, those fractures or those trauma imprints connected to what came before, with this planet exploding and this kind of Lyran wars that stepped down into the Orion wars, and the reasons that things got so bad that a planetary body like Tiamat would actually explode. Also Maldek. I mean, when we drop down into this lower harmonic universe, the land and the planetary grids hold the fracture and traumas of what came before, because it's in its memory banks, with what happened. And portions of that Tiamat body are in the earth. Part of it became earth and the other part Maldek, and then that exploded. So that macro to the micro shows how much disruption actually took place that made it very difficult to hold the integration of polarity of the masculine and feminine. The planetary grids that had that trauma imprint was leveraged by invader groups to begin to install dark reversal technology to put it in reversal, so that we would be born generation after generation with more amnesia and more forgetfulness of our true origins. And Anunnaki played a big part. The Nephilim reversal grid and the Niberian dyadic crystal grids that literally harvest and siphon energy and stream programs through the pillars of society in order to keep us in this dependency bond with this inverted system that wants us to be in duality, really wants the masculine and feminine to not be in balance. So we see patriarchy, we see the exiled divine feminine, we see the wounded divine masculine, and these different personas and programs that have been, cast upon us that make us forget what's truly inside. Everything is from out there and what we take in. Social engineering, being groomed, being manipulated. And then trauma loops that never get resolved that are passed down generation to generation. So it's not something that just comes natural when we're babies, when we're really little in our purity. Yes. But boom, the minute we land here, everything is trying to keep us from that inner knowing. We look at Christ outside of us. We look at everything outside of us. So that's what it means to me, is that remembrance and knowing that we all have that. And part of the deprogramming is to, take away these distortions, collapse these inversions, or dismantle them. And in doing that, we dismantle the dark weaponry and the deep state and everything they're trying to do to harvest and siphon our energies to engineer this artificial timeline and false trajectory into some kind of new world order. So that reclamation and remembrance is everything. And it comes from, a lot of self-honesty and a lot of events in our lives that we manifest to shake us up and help us to come back into that remembrance, which is definitely hard for some people because it's captured by outer solutions or projections that keep a person even more dependent on the system rather than self-discovery. And in self-discovery, that's when it really comes alive. Not everybody's going to name it, oh, my Christ-Sophia is lighting up, but it's really an authentic vibration and frequency that brings the body a lot of peace, a lot of balance, and a lot of joy, because that's what our physical body wants. It wants our truth, not these overlays, not these projections, not these inversions or programs. So.
Thank you. And that makes a lot of sense. And you actually triggered a thought in my head mentioning Tiamat, because I remember the story of with the Sumerians that Nibiru is the 10th planet that's coming. But if Tiamat was here before it was destroyed, that would make Pluto the 10th planet, which would be Nibiru to them. And it got downgraded from a planet, and that's the only planet that's been downgraded. So it got me wondering, did we mislabel Pluto? Is that really the home of, and we just are turning a blind eye and not thinking about it?
Yeah, well, good question. I mean, there's just, a lot. I mean, Pluto is a really powerful planet connected to death, rebirth, alchemy, transformation, going into the underworlds, and correcting inversion and distortion and reclaiming that creative cauldron in order to, alchemize, transform, and give birth to new realities. It connects with our reproductive organs and lower chakras, sexual centers, kundalini. So it's the whole Nibiru thing. And the amount of planets that came in after the fall or the collapsing of the Taurus system and the Tiamat explosion, how many more planets came into the picture, including Nibiru? That I guess, what is it, 360,000 year orbit, some say? I've heard it was already kind of partly destroyed and it's not returning. I don't know. To me, that's like the Anunnaki return that I don't think is going to be as successful as it's really about this divine blueprint returning. And that could be a part of it, but it has to bridge us back and not be the gatekeeper anymore if it's going to have any influence at all. And it's up to us to discern. So I don't know if that kind of connects to what you're saying, but.
It does. And it actually kind of links to the next question I was thinking about. And that is you like to talk about our galactic history. And as we're relearning our divine blueprint, it begs the question, why has our galactic history been hidden from us? What possibly could be the threat?
Well, it's a big threat because this is how we heal, is to, dig deep into things that have happened, get to the root of it, and bring more unconditional love, more coherence, more understanding to the traumas and the wounds. If we're relying on what really happened, then that's what we do as a humanity. We address it, right? So they build hospitals, they have prisons and this and that, because they're dealing with the trauma and symptoms of something that we're not getting to the root of. Dysfunction, broken families and troubled children, people that have been influenced by the television, people that come in from past lives with, unresolved behavior patterns, ancestral patterns that haven't been resolved, and then you've got the cabal and the 13 families and the offshoots of all of that and the darkness that comes with that, and how that has become the underbelly of so many industries and institutions like Hollywood. And so we're in the symptomatic, and look outside of yourself and go on pharmaceuticals or go to this shrink but we're still not getting to the root. So a lot of this is coming to the surface because people are starting to see the underbelly behind Hollywood, the governments, the medical industry, the social engineering, the geoengineering, that, wow, there's something operating behind the scenes that this is not organic, this is not natural. But if we understood and went to school to learn our galactic history, we'd be like, oh, these wars happened. Oh, this dark technology was put in the earth grids. Here's the social engineering agenda that works in unison with these powerful dark weapons in order to harvest and siphon the energy of distortion and compliance and consent and all these addictions that we don't realize maybe are addictions. And also the punishment and reward system, people just wanting that pat on the back and that good paycheck. We're not addressing anything on a root level. So if we were to know that, we would be able to find careers, and we'd be in touch with our soul calling, which remembers that, which was there. We'd be addressing it. People would be doing a lot more of what we're seeing today, but a long time ago, right? More hypnoregression, more working with frequency and crystals and plants and herbs, and more digging deep into the Akashic, right? To understand more. There'd be more awareness of, what this earth needs in order for it to, regenerate. And the beauty is it's happening anyway. We're kept from it to keep us in this dependency bond. But because the soul and the higher intelligence, it comes through so many individuals, and the grid workers are here, and this ascension window is so powerful. The planetary alignments hold the intelligence of the cosmic origins, the galactic origins, and how it plays out in the here and now. That intelligence knows how to repair its own planetary system. And so do we. We know how to heal our own bodies, right? So we're catching up with, that greater history, because there's such a power of acceleration, happening on the planet right now, and the energy shifting, that it's forcing people into, digging deeper and looking deeper. So it's not the kind of thing you're going to get in the school systems. It's the kind of thing you're going to find if you take a break and you find yourself and you go explore, you go do research, you dig deeper than what they're going to give you, in third class geometry or whatever. It's not sacred geometry, right? Science is saying it's junk DNA. That's not the true divine template, right? So we have to really pay attention to what doesn't feel right and begin to explore what that is, because then we become the educators and the reminders of this next phase of creation. So to answer your question, I know I'm so tired. I have these really long-winded answers. The reason it's been kept from us is because we would heal. We'd be too empowered. We would overthrow the deep state right away. They need us. They're vampiric. They want us to be dependent on them to keep them in power. So knowledge and wisdom, and wisdom that comes from knowledge, sort of like our own childhoods. If somebody gave you a script and gave you a storyline that wasn't true about what you went through as a child, how could you possibly heal if you weren't well, or truly heal? It's the same thing with our galactic history. We're kept from it because if we were to know, we would truly heal. And the thing is, it's all coming out. And it doesn't have to be about the information. It's also about tuning into trauma, tuning into imbalance within, looking at, the family members you were born to, the different things you keep attracting in your life, and really working out those kinks, and bringing balance and wholeness to yourself. And then you on a micro level are making a big difference to the bigger picture of it all. And life gives us everything we need to be able to achieve that. It's just when it gets captured by the system and these different, sorry, my neighbor, the person's outside, when it gets, captured by a system that doesn't want to look at that, doesn't want to help our children when they're getting downloads or they can't sit still, and understanding, wow, they might have a starseed mission. They might be somebody that is remembering Tiamat exploding. I mean, it's not a part of the dialogue. Can you imagine if it was? Then we'd be really addressing everything, and everybody would stand a much, much better chance of living a fruitful, embodied life, because kids come in that way and we're not looking at it. We ignore it.
And then hearing you talk about it, it got me started thinking about, like in the Bible, we have the Tower of Babel, where we all spoke the same language. We were getting too close to heaven, and then the gods destroyed the tower, split everybody up. Well, what if this tower was a spaceport?
Well, there's a lot of that kind of stuff going. I mean, there are advanced civilizations. I mean, Atlantis, Lemuria, the original root races, Hyperborea or Polaris, Hyperborea, Lemuria, Atlantis. The gateways were open. There was a lot coming and going from Earth to off-planet star systems. The pyramid technology was in alignment with the star systems. So a lot of this kind of biblical or these kind of like stories, there was a lot more tech going on and a lot more symbolism connected to something that might not be exactly what these stories and myths told us.
And so
a lot went underground though, right? And
right. So I'm kind of curious, what was your aha awakening moment that got you started digging into the Venus mysteries?
Venus mysteries. Well, I never really called it Venus mysteries, but I've just always been connected with Venus. And we all are, right? We all have Venus in our charts. We all have a heart. But when one looks at the actual archetype of Venus or what Venus really represents, I mean, to me, it's the unconditional love of the mother. The Venus transits form a perfect pentagram. The orbit forms a perfect pentagram. It's very connected to the Magdalene energy and how the Sophianic corrections have helped the mother to anchor back into the planet. So when you look at the way Venus operates as a planet, it's truly fascinating, because when you look at the symbolism of the inverted pentagram and how the ether goes into the ground and how it's symbolic of, Satanists and devil worship and things like that, that's a part of this greater network that worships the Baphomet, and it's part of the Dark Mother reversal grid technology, and also the Mothers of Darkness that literally are behind how the system is rigged. They're part of that architecture of inversion that has built the kind of societies that operate in modern times, in current times. And basically the system is rigged to keep the mother from coming back in. That's why the 13th sign is so significant. And the 13th sign is active right now. The 13th sign comes in November 30th to December 17th. And where are we? We're December 8th. So the 13th sign represents the ether elements, which is the top point of the pentagram. And the Venus transits help to anchor that mother energy back into the planet. And that's when the sun started to move through the 13th sign again. So I have a lot about this in my book about, Venus. And then of course there's Valthor, there's the divine mother archetypes, Hathor, Magdalene, Inanna, Isis. They're all connected to Venus. And Venus, when you look at the archetypes of, these goddess energies, they're connected to nature, right? Persephone as well, and going into the underworld and coming back out again. And when you look at the seasons and how it's connected with that, it's pretty phenomenal. So, the morning and evening star, if you look up any of these archetypes I just mentioned, there's a strong affiliation to Venus. And so basically these signs in the sky signal the end of a great cycle of time. And according to the Mayan calendar, Venus and the revival of, this, Magdalene energy and the return of the mother brings that balance back and collapses all that reversal grid technology, and it's the override frequency. So there's just a lot about that. And to me, again, that's like the unconditional love of the mother that is wanting to reclaim her body and her children, but it's been kept out by this dark reversal grid technology, this dark satanic, network that has been entrapping the Akamoth aspect of the Sophionic energy that got yanked into matter, particularly after Tiamat's fall. So the 13th remedial flame comes in and corrects the inversion and brings it back to source again. And that's connected to Venus. That's connected to the sacred geometry that the Venus transits create. So that's chapter 1 of my book, everyone, if it doesn't make a whole lot of sense trying to explain it. But it's pretty wild. Like Ashiana says from Keelantic Science, and Lisa Renee as well. The earth is indeed a living entity upon whose back and within whose heart you all presently reside. And in polarity mechanics, earth is female with an organically female magnetic dimensional 13 monadic core. So, and that's what's so wild about the mothers of darkness and the 13 families. And all this inversion has literally rigged the system to keep that energy from returning. That is their greatest fear. And the fact that the mother energy has returned to reclaim her body means no New World Order. It's not possible, a New World Order or any of these. That's why when we see the psyops and false flags, they're falling apart. They can't take hold. The actual dark technology and that reversal grid technology has been removed and dismantled. And it's not through digging it out with your hands or with a shovel. It's through being the override frequency, holding the higher frequency, holding the sacred union energies, allowing grief and trauma to move through your body and release it. You literally collapse control grids through overriding the social engineering and all the things that have kept us as engineered humans, as socially engineered humans. Right. And that's how we also dismantle the geoengineering. We are way more powerful than we can imagine in taking down the dark technology, but it has to come from within.
And I just realized, as you were describing Venus and how it's, we think, Roman goddess of love, how it's the mother. I started, realizing, what is the one thing that NASA and science is pushing us to do? Venus and Mars. We have love, we have war. It's like we have the two energies that oppose, that are here in existence on this planet, that we're constantly going between. And so, do you think that's the real reason why the NASA is saying, we need to go to Venus, we need to go to Mars, is not that they're the closest planets that they want to tell us, but it's the energies that are there on those planets.
I don't know. I don't know much about, I was recruited to go to Mars. I know there's Mars colonies and Venusians that live underground in Valthor, and lots of Venusians at the conference I'm going to be at that focuses a lot on Venus, and a lot of people that have a strong connection, right? In their hearts. Somebody just wrote that they have Venus in the 8th house, which is a really powerful placement. And when I, name the archetypes, that's not really the source field, right? The source field is like Ein Sof, right? These are emanations of the mother, of walking the path, archetypes we all carry within ourselves. Same with the masculine, the Christos, right? But we have the masculine and feminine within us, the electric magnetic, the Christ-Sophia. It's a relationship. It's an integration of polarity that begins to dissolve the seals and fences that have been placed in our DNA. And that's a whole nother story or like explanation that, a lot of listeners and maybe you are, already familiar with. So the energies of Venus and Mars and every planet has a lower octave and a higher octave. So I do presentations about the weaponization of the zodiac and how a lot of different tactics are being used to keep us in the shadow expression without moving through the shadow work. So Aries, Mars can be warlike, very aggressive, very me, just kind of like out for themselves. But it's also the planet of, willpower and divine identity, right? So Venus, the planet of love, can have its lower octave and its higher octave, unconditional love. But the thing is, they're meant to work together. Mars benefits from the love of Venus. Venus benefits from the warrior energy of Mars. They're opposite each other in the chart, in the zodiac. You've got Aries, Mars, the first house. Opposite, you have Libra, Venus. They're directly opposite. So the nodes, if somebody's born with the South Node, Aries, first house, or just Aries sign, North Node, Libra, their soul work in this lifetime is to go from Aries and to integrate the Libra and the Venus, right? So they're meant to be married and more in union. And it's very symbolic, and it's about, what's within us. Our solar plexus doesn't do well when it acts alone. It needs to be the power of love. It needs to be the power that comes through from the heart, and vice versa, right? So, Venus, when it's in action, it's a prayer in action. It's the love of pursuing what you're passionate about that has that willpower, right? So they work really well together, because Mars, when it's compartmentalized and it's lacking heart, can be really aggressive and abusive and a warmonger. Venus without Mars, sometimes it doesn't take enough action. And I mean, I don't know, every chart is different, but NASA and just the way that the planetary energies can be worked with sometimes, with bases on Mars, lunar bases, and the Saturn moon matrix, and the reversal grids on the planet Earth. That's all to influence the way we relate to these energies. These planets connect to our organs, right? Saturn is the law of structure. It rules the skeletal system. Mars rules, the head, also the solar plexus, the heart chakra, Libra, right? So if we're caught in the inversions, our health suffers. The way we relate to each other suffers. So we're all given, the challenges that we need in order to correct those inversions to be in the higher octave of these planetary energies. So yeah, people want to go to Mars. They want to go to Venus. I know there's a lot about the exploration of it all, but I just hope we can really work on this planet and open up the gateway so coming and going is a lot easier, and we can advance our DNA again and become like these Merkaba ships and be able to just come and go as we please. And until then, yeah, is it all just going to be technological, and what kind of humans are actually going, and is it going to create more trouble than it's worth? I don't know.
That's a good point. And while we were talking about that, Carmen Sanchez asked an interesting question. She says, this days is like dream, like nothing is real, and sometimes feel headache. This can be part of the new energies that are coming in?
Exactly. Boom. I mean, that's just the way to explain, or just give words to the energies right now. Saturn moving into Aries, Neptune moving into Aries. Neptune is the dream. Neptune is all about the multidimensional, the spiritual, the creative imagination. Saturn's all about structure, the law of structure. We've come out of dark Saturn, inverted Saturn, which is all about authority and control and mandates and, just answering to an outer authority, feeling conditioned. You don't necessarily feel conditioned. Maybe you are conditioned, but that's all Saturn. Energy blocks as well. The higher octave of Saturn is self-mastery and being able to become your own authority. You're not just always playing by the rules, unless they're important rules. Of course, there's some rules that we need to abide by, but it's more about personal authority, having authority over your space, having your own sense of what your structure, your physical body needs, without it being about what some outer authority is saying. We can measure our own inner authority against outer authority and see if it's an agreement. And if it isn't, this is when we don't consent. This is when we say, I will not consent, right? That's old Saturn. This new shift, right? Saturn in Aries, Neptune in Aries is the embodiment of the divine human, where it is a dream. And we're the script writers of this dream. We're working with the law of structure, and we're moving out of inverted Saturn into the higher octave, self-mastery. In Aries, it means that we're embodying more of our divine human nature, but the weaponized inverted one that they want to kind of pull us into, even though the deep state and all this is crumbling, is being lost in the illusion, being easily thrown into, just feeling super confused and being caught in deception because of what the news is telling you. Only seeing the timeline based in what you're seeing outside of you, not being an empowered person that is actually creating your future. So people are still caught in that because they don't know what to do with, the possibility of having this level of freedom. Like, I can create my own future. It's like they want somebody to do it for them. They want to plug into something other than themselves. So it might take them a little bit longer, but and I think the headache, the headaches definitely come with Aries. Aries rules the head. Saturn, constriction, right? But it's constriction that we can begin to understand because it can become a boundary. What is constricting you? Is it something that you read? Is it somebody in your life? Is it something you watched in the news? Well, that discomfort that Saturn can bring can become a boundary. Like, I don't want that in my life. And then, Saturn's a boundary. That's part of moving into the self-mastery, is that, do you want to open the door? Or you want to close the door? Having more personal authority. I want this person in my life. I want this commitment. I'm devoted. Or allowing something in and just agreeing to it because somebody's making you do it and you think you have no choice.
So I have an interesting question for you with astrology and the planets. And I just started thinking about this because we were originally a 13-month system that got changed to a 12-month system. So astrology-wise, would that mean then there's 13 signs, but we dropped one to keep going with the system? And as everything's related to the planets, does that mean we were originally 13 planets?
Not originally. The 13 only comes in when a system is so broken and so caught in inversion that it has to act as the remedial flame. Otherwise, it's like part of the 0-point unified field. It just is a tone that kind of sits in a position, like if you see the tree of life, like in the Ein Sof, right? And then you got the 12 strand, you got the 12 spheres, you got the 12 stargates, and it kind of acts as the stabilizing tone, right? So if you look at 12 gates, like 12 tones, that became 12 flames that are carrying a trauma imprint from exploded planets from before that got put in reversal grid technology inversion. The 13 flame, the 13 sign, which is actually ruled by Chiron, the wounded healer, needed to come in order to braid and restore and bring back the 12 into alignment again. But yeah, as far as like 13 planets and the 13 moon calendar, I mean, it's all connected. The 13 moon calendar, the 13 sign though, that sits between Scorpio and Sagittarius overlays right on top, right? And it becomes the part of the laws of alchemy. We go from Scorpio into that underworld, into the transformation cycle, into that depth, right? And we move through this field of alchemy, where it's possible to rapidly heal, to just accelerate our journey and our growth in extreme ways. It's the sign that literally dissolves how dark Saturn has bound a lot of people into compliancy and dependency. And it just takes us through this passage, which is why this was prophesized as a powerful window period. The Mayans understood this. The sun started to move through the 13th sign in 2010. The significant date of the Mayan calendar was, 2012, and yes, Magdalene represents the 13. She was the 13th apostle. So when that energy fell into distortion and they tried to wipe her out and who she truly was, that it's all connected to the Venus transits in the 13th sign and the return of the mother. So she's like the daughter principle that reconnects to the mother, right? So the journey of the Magdalene and the archetype of the divine feminine that we all carry, we don't have to name it, but it's an archetype we all carry, goes into those underworlds, moves into that inversion in order to correct it, in order to alchemize it. So we're all connected with it. We all have access to the 13th sign. And look at it. When I do presentations, I connect it to the DNA strands. I connect it to the planetary grid network, because everything's connected, right? The 13 as the remedial flame connects us back to the 0-point unified field and collapses the deep state. and corrects the inversions. So again, the remedial flame comes in when things have gotten so bad that it has to intervene. Sorry, everybody, if I'm not expressing well. I've got a very, very sick father right now. Okay, but does that kind of make sense?
It does, actually, and it cleared it up for me. And one thing that I know you talk about a lot on, but I'm not sure if you talked about it in this way, is, you talk about like the roles that the ETs are playing in space to help us, but do they play a role on our actual planet?
Yeah, well, I mean, we've always been multidimensional beings, whether you remember it or not. I mean, that's the only thing that separates people from it is lack of remembrance and the inability to want to see it. I mean, it's there. It's always been there. When we look at dormant DNA, what is that dormant DNA? Well, it connects us to a much, much larger picture, our multidimensional self that has had experiences in other star systems, beginning with the Guardian founder races in Lyra and Orion and Tara. And, so ETs have been interacting with our planet for a long time. We were more advanced humans that if we looked at would maybe call them ETs or benevolent ETs. This Earth held a much, much different energy than it does today. And the pyramid technology was connected to the star systems, and there was, ships and beings coming and going. And then, after certain cataclysmic events happened, particularly the final fall of Atlantis, I mean, everything really went underground or it left. And here we are as humans, and we're dealing with, ETs like Anunnaki, Dracos, Greys, some Nordics that were all a part of this reversal grid network, putting this, kind of technology in place. So, and its purpose was to keep us, very, very dumbed down. And at the same time, benevolent beings put seals in our DNA so that we wouldn't be able to just go back to higher earth energies and recontaminate it or cause destruction because it had already been destroyed. There had to be a lot of repair work. Some ET species went extinct. And remember, they are us, like the aquafarians, right? We don't want to look at them as separate. We want to look at it as we used to be able to inhabit those kind of bodies. If we were more negatively oriented, we might have been captured by something that bioengineered us to become grays, to become like EBEs, to lose our reproductive capacities, and to, and that's what a lot of the transhumanism agenda is all about. And we've seen this in other star systems and in different phases of our galactic history, that humans can become grays, and humans have been benevolent higher ET beings. Here we are in our human vessel with a lot of dormant DNA. So if that was to be all switched on, then what are we, ETs again? But the thing is, we're on Earth, so we're Earth-based, right? But we don't have to be bound to the Earth. This is the thing with like Prison Planet going away. Sure, we can come to Earth. It'll be like Grand Central Station of the cosmos because it already has an affinity with all these star systems, and it's housed so many different races and so much diversity. But the difference is going to be we're not bound here. Right? So we break that reincarnation loop when we deprogram. The only reason we come back in is because we're still hooked into some kind of programming that keeps our soul bound. But we're not victims. We simply have to do the work to know the difference between our authentic true self and what has been engineered or imposed on us or indoctrinated into us. And that's what sets us free. So that is the ascension path. Whether we see it in 2 years, like this planet's all of a sudden like looking way, way different. Well, if it's happening differently for you, you're going to manifest different things in your life to take you to a higher Earth experience. But I do feel, this bifurcation is happening without it completely splitting off. But it's like your soul is preparing for the next experience. And whether it's here or somewhere else, if your soul is growing, if you're doing the inner work, if you're dismantling programming, or you've always been somebody who hasn't really been programmed, but maybe slipped into it, we're constantly moving as souls, regardless of our physical environment, if we so choose to do that inner work. And that inner work is really remembrance, remembering who we are. It doesn't have to be hard work. It's just like that revelation of, wait, this is the real me versus, what we've turned into for the sake of others, or just to want to fit in or because we're scared of people, what people might think, you know?
I agree. And talking about programs, it reminds me that I was at a Christmas concert last night, and I was like listening to the carols in a new way and was like, wait a minute, there's programming in this. And it got me thinking about something. And it ties into you and I in Florida. We were talking about the knights and King Arthur, how they're attached to the zodiac, and they could be star beings or hybrids here on Earth. And then I started thinking about, our stories of the angels and the archangels. And I'm like, are they hybrids because they're the messengers? They're the ones that's relating to humans where the gods can't. So does that make the archangels really like hybrids that are operating on this planet?
Well, I mean, they're like messengers, and I mean, there's fallen angels, there's archangels, there's archdemons, archon. Yeah, I mean, there's humans that are angels that have been angels, they're spirit guides in the past, right? Some people perceive things that other people don't. Hybrids, well, souls can be hybrids in a way, like demigods or half this, half that, and I mean, that goes into a whole, lot of stuff. But I mean, our ancient origins, pre-fall, right? Before galactic wars, before distortion, before Anunnaki, that's what, brings everything back home again. And messengers and guides and angels, are part of helping us with that. And sometimes we take time off of being human to go back into those places or those angelic forms or those higher ET forms. But our consciousness and intelligence and our soul memory can still have a connection with that. The limitations of the physical density, though, are able to alter and shift and change and advance, but it's not going to happen overnight, right? We're not going to just wake up in a Merkaba avatar angel body if we came into this density, but we can still hold the soul codes, the memory, the connection, the communication, the alignment from our higher self. And that's what changes physical matter. That is what collapses the control grids, because we're anchoring in that energy and we're clearing out, where trauma and, dark rituals have kept the earth in a trauma loop as well. So, when we connect into that and bring that in, it collapses all of this. And this is what's been happening. And some people can put terminology behind it and talk about it. Other people just are doing it, maybe can't even explain what they're doing. I do my best to try and put it into words, but that's what so many souls have been doing. It's incredible. And it comes in the form of downloads. It comes in just these inner knowingnesses. I mean, that's our intuition, right? So that's why we have to honor our anxiety, anger, and depression and give it a voice, because it's our guide. It's telling us exactly who we are and what we need to do with our life. And we're so used to shutting it up, judging it, or wanting to medicate it or make it go away, when it's very, very important to give it the attention and voice it deserves. Then we're raising our vibration, because we're not being held down by symptoms we can't explain or reactions to life that other people might not understand. It's just so important, because this is not something that we find outside of ourselves. This is something we give permission to awaken from within, because it's already in there. We just have to remember. And all the weird physical symptoms and everything that feels off is part of the process of discovery. But we tend to fear it and think something's wrong with us, but it's the opposite. Something's wrong with the system that's keeping us from really pulling this forward or bringing it back into embodiment.
And so Jasmine Hart 1481 has an interesting question for you. Outside of having a deep sense within, how does one know if they are an angel? And I kind of want to piggyback on that and say, how do we know it's not a false angel? What's the best way to know the difference?
Well, I think if you were a fallen angel, you wouldn't probably even ask this question, because the fallen angelic energies are very much about false light, very much about domination. It's lost its angelicness. It's not in direct connect with source. So the fallen angels are connected to harvesting and siphoning human life force and energy because they don't have that direct connect anymore. So I'm not saying, Lucifer, I see Lucifer more as a principle, more as like a construct, more as a soul group, not just one individual or one being, right? And so fallen angelics tend to energy vampire off of other people. They have narcissistic tendencies. They have a lot of, kind of inner self-importance, but it's starting to create a lot of issues for them because it's not sustainable. It's not regenerative. It's not connected to unconditional love. It's not connected to benevolence. So people can have fallen angelic tendencies like negative ego, but if they were to begin to correct that or notice that, then the true angelic nature would emerge. So people that don't have that negative ego that they're caught in are very angelic, people that are loving, that love animals, that love nature, that love children, that, or at least are guardians and protectors, or have that instinct to want to protect if they saw anything being harmed or in danger. People that have compassion and care about other people's feelings. There are different levels of angels, right? But we're in physical form. So a lot of very advanced souls that are incredibly heart-centered, incredibly resilient, are like Christed beings. So there's a lot of earth angels. It's just, if you're a being of love, you're an earth angel. When you die, I can't say where you're going to go, but I'm sure the angels are going to be dancing around you because you're a frequency match to them. And if you're not and you're fallen, you might have to move through some difficult terrain in order to purify and clear that energy. Because I look at purgatory as purgatory. Something needs to be purged. You're kind of locked in between, the higher dimensions and the lower, right? I don't see it as heaven and hell. I see it more about frequency and, what you're carrying. If you're so corrupted in your negative ego, your soul is going to want to take you through a purification process. If you resist it and you want to stay a dark player, then you're going to make home in hell. You're going to love hell. You're going to think Satan's great, right? You're going to be like, bring it, bring it. But if you really want to correct yourself, you're going to go through the process of purification, of self-correction in order to get back to the angelic realms. So it really depends on frequency. I think everybody's got the choice of, the devil or the angel on your shoulder. Which one are you going to choose? And people that have really worked on the heart, if they used to be evil, they can reach that again. And those that might have been all angelic might become fallen because they just can't maintain it in a world and density that is this inverted and destructive. But to me, like really powerful angels that are on earth can move through inversion and not forget who they are or lose themselves. But we got to cut ourselves slack if that does happen, because this is the kind of world we're in. And this is why, to me, the angelic energy is compassion and forgiveness, and that we all help each other rehabilitate and get back to source. Some criminal acts are way worse than others, of course, and they require rehabilitation on a very, very deep level. But the willingness has to be there. And I always think if you can turn a perfectly benevolent person into a trained assassin through mind control, you can turn a criminal with the help of something like working with frequency and imagery and digging deep into the root of this and helping them get back to their soul.
Very cool. And Carmen Sanchez has an interesting question for you. I hear we need care. We need to care what we're thinking because we manifest more fast. And in 2026, we see manifesting more faster. And all of this with imagination. Is this true?
Yeah, Mercury, the mind, Mercury is the magician archetype. Mercury rules Gemini, so communication, throat chakra, right? If we don't speak our truth, sometimes that manifests as thyroid issues or feel like, it's just really hard to communicate. But yes, what is the quality of our thought forms? We shape reality based on our thought forms. That's why they use mind control, because they want to capture the magician energy to create magic to serve them, where we believe in what propaganda, what we're seeing in the news, we believe in it. So our thought forms basically make magic for them. They stay on top and we stay small, but that's all changing, right? Mercury also rules Virgo. How does the mind speak to the body? The body, mind, spirit, communication. If the mind is speaking programmings to the body does not like it. It gets sick eventually, right? Some programmings might keep it alive a little longer because, maybe it's coming from feeling really rewarded in your job and thinking you're like the greatest thing ever. And then realizing like maybe that career, that job wasn't everything. Then you have to be flexible. So Mercury, the way the mind talks to the body, if it's coming from the higher self and you're speaking your dreams and your visions and your inspirations to your body, if you're speaking self-love, if you're speaking your trust in yourself and what you're capable of doing, you're going to manifest miracles. You're going to accelerate in your healing process. You're going to manifest your dreams and visions into reality. But if it's caught in I can't do that, or that's impossible, or it's a negative frame of mind, or, it's hatred and toxic, that's going to really mess up your world because you're the magician of your reality. And you got to ask yourself, how much is that energy being taken from you and used by others? Look at all the talent and skills that, people grow up with that the system wants to leverage. But here's a paycheck to make you feel better. And then all of a sudden, next thing you know, they're making you consent to what we saw in 2020 and all this crap that we had to go through. That was a very pivotal time of people being like, hey, I don't need to consent. And that redirect can be daunting, but you're the magician. You're the writer of your reality. I lived on the road so many times. I had no money at all. I had nothing. If my thought forms were like, you're screwed, or, your mom's really mad at you because you're not living this better life she wanted, it would just get darker and darker. But when I was thinking in my head, I'm abundant, I'm in the now, I've got everything in front of me, and I changed my thoughts, I would find money on the ground, I would meet cool people, and it just took that simple shift of thought that made all the difference in the world. And that I saw the magician like nobody's business. And then I got into astrology. I'm like, aha. I'd always kind of delved in it, but that was a great question, though. It's so, yeah.
So I have a follow-up with, I'm curious your perspective on a little bit of galactic history that's coming to light. And that is, we have ancient Greeks and indigenous tribes that talk about a Earth that had no moon. And then and we're told, no, the moon is a natural object that broke off of the Earth. It's always been there. So what is your thoughts on what the moon really is?
Well, after, Tiamat's explosion, it's been said that it was, brought in. It's like an artificial satellite, like a Death Star, and there's just ET beings or grays inside, and there's lunar bases and this and that. So there's, a very strong artificial component to the moon, kind of working like this kind of satellite and base. And then you got Saturn. What's the Saturn moon matrix? The rings of Saturn and how that relates to the moon. It's broadcasting a false reality. 98% of our consciousness for a big portion of humanity has been caught in this sort of artificial overlay. And how that relates to the moon. So that creates the imbalance, right? But it doesn't mean the whole moon is like that. There's a lot of ancient components to the moon. The 13 moon calendar, the higher octave of the moons. Again, every planetary body has its higher octave and lower octave. So even if it's been tampered with, even if it, comes from here and it became this or that, look at what the Earth became. It became a 3D planet, completely infiltrated and overtaken by, the cabal, like an infestation. But is that really what's underneath it all? No, this is an incredible planet. This is a beautiful planet. So when you bring the moon back to where it began and bring it back to the body that it emerged from, then we're connecting to the more ancient, more higher octave of the lunar, which the outer planets help us to connect with. So it's one of those things where, yes, if we didn't have a moon at all, we'd be very different, I'm sure. But there'd be some sort of lunar energy, because the lunar, is a part of who we are. It's part of the feminine. It's part of the silver and gold gateways. It's just the artificial overlays and the traumas and galactic wars and exploded planets allowed for a lot of intruder and controller races to use dark technology to influence these planetary systems to impact us and control us, because they know that it connects to our body, it connects us to our physiology. All the planets do. So if you can manipulate the planets, you can manipulate the humans. And they use, trauma and our amnesia and everything in order to achieve that. But they're not in charge here. There's the guardians, there's higher benevolent beings that are a part of this whole equation. But we have to move through the gatekeepers and collapse our relationship to the dark ones in order to reach them, because we don't realize how much more attached to them we are. And the way they attach us is through the programmings and through the dependency bond with a system that is based in inversion that connects with the planets that they have weaponized. That's why I do presentations about the weaponized zodiac and how these planetary bodies have been manipulated to keep us down. And we are overthrowing all of that by reconnecting to the more ancient. It's like sort of saying, if you have an artificial arm, you still have an arm, you still have the energy field of an arm, you still have past life memories of when you actually had a real arm, I mean, that's a bad example, but I'm just saying, like, there is an ancient template of all of this that we can connect with, which exists within us. And when we embody it, we collapse the weaponization of the planets and the signs and the planetary grid.
And I know we're getting close to the hour, but if you could, I have one question that I'm very curious your thought of, and I don't know if you can answer it in a few minutes. But that is, we're focused on first contact being with the ETs out in the solar system. But do you think our actual first contact will be inner Earth?
Could very well be. I mean, people are having first contact all the time. For some people, they'll be like, first contact, I've been contacted since I was a kid, or I've been contacted for many lifetimes. But yeah, in the bigger picture, world stage kind of level. Is her name Jordan?
Jordan Shea.
On a bigger picture, level, I don't think we're all going to have the same experiences. I think the government's disclosure is really about this first contact, landing on the White House lawn and this and that. We've already had UFOs flying over the Capitol. We've already had the LA, the UFOs, the battle in Los Angeles, right? There's already been Roswell crashes and numerous down crashes of UFO craft. There's already underground bases, and Eisenhower talked to Balfour and ordered an invasion of the Dulce underground military base, and ETs were there. I don't understand this first contact. We've been contacted for so long. We've been dealing with ETs, positive and negative, for a really long time. So, but I know what you mean about the first contact. Yeah, it's the one that will awaken the sleeping masses, the ones that will see it like that. They don't have this bigger picture information like you and I do, and your listeners and a lot of people we know. They haven't been a part of this dialogue. So how manipulated is that going to be? And who is it going to be? That's the question. And fortunately, there's enough of us that have researched and worked in this field, and enough people that have come forward with their contact experiences and their abductee experiences that will be able to be a part of this larger conversation to keep it in check. Just like conspiracy theorists and architects and engineers for 9/11 kept all that in check. So there's enough informed and intelligent people on the planet to help the masses discern what this first contact really is. Is it blue beam? What is it? As far as like what I would consider to be the best kind of first contact would be like the guardians and some of the more benevolent ones. And that's there. The veil is thinning. We're going to see a lot more than we can imagine, but can we get through that first contact kind of scenario first? Because the ones that are really here to dupe us don't want us to see what's on the other side of the veil, which they've been trying to keep us from for a really long time. It's just they don't directly intervene. Balfour was rogue. A lot of benevolent beings more have like personal contacts when it comes to bigger picture, like showing up for everyone. We got to get through this next phase before the veil is fully lifted and it's more visible. Right now, we have to move through a potential layer of deception, which I don't think is going to be as bad as some people have predicted. And I think it's going to be a mixed bag, because with every positive event, there's always a psyops that wants to cover up so we don't experience the real deal. But that's all collapsing. I mean, I think we're way further ahead than we have been, and we've come way further than they ever expected us to.
That's good to hear, and that puts a lot of hope into the world, which I think we need. And since we are out of time, do you want to share where people can find your book that we've been talking about?
Yeah, so it's called Awakening the Truth Frequency, and I got to put it back on my website because this other website I'm not using, and that's where my book was. But I'll give you the website to get the book, cccpublishing.com, big C, cccpublishing.com. And Amazon, you can find it, Awakening the Truth Frequency. I get into all these topics, and you can take your time with it. And it's a little easier to digest than me, who hasn't gotten any sleep in a couple days. But I really appreciate you having me on. I hope I did okay, guys. And my website is cosmicgaia.org, COSMICGAIA, Gaia.org. You'll see all my social media links. I have a Substack, and I do a lot of really interactive things. And yeah, I have a subscription, and yeah, you can book a reading with me, and I can check out your chart. And anyway, it's been great to spend some time with you.
Yes, well, hopefully get to have you back on again. And I want to say two things real quick to you, because I know you do have to go. First is my heart and my show's heart to you with what you're going through with your dad.
Oh, thanks. He's an amazing man. Yeah. Just so everybody knows, my father's got days to live, and he's with my sister right now. I'm heading over there in a little while. But yeah, we're trying to get him into hospice in Florida. I was going to fly him home to New York, and the plans changed. And so I'm glad to be able to take the time out to say hi to everybody. But yeah, I'm a little bit like, my attention is in so many places. I hope, yeah, that it came across in a way that made some kind of sense to what's deep within you. That's why I call my book Awakening the Truth Frequency, because it's really about what emerges in you. It's about your truth. And when we all live our truth, we can harmonize and begin to, yeah, recognize that diversity and harmony is true oneness. So
thank you. And the second thing I want to say is also my heart and the heart of my show to you. Thank you for what you're doing for humanity.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you as well, Michael. It's been so wonderful to get to know you. I appreciate all that you do. And I appreciate your feedback, Jordan, and everybody who was able to tune in, and you too, Carmen, and your comments. And my Substack thing, I'm actually doing a Q&A tonight. You can find my Substack link on my website, cosmicgaia.org. So I'm going to make it more interactive, but I write a lot of articles there and things you can really take your time with. So much love, you guys.
Yes, thank you. And her links are in the description. Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to speak over you. I was just going to say the links are in the description, so you should be able to find them there.
Sweet.
So,
okay,
thank
bye.
you. Bye-bye. Bye-bye, everyone. Have a wonderful week.